Today, we're talking with a really special guest, Michael Caito, CEO of MAP, about his experiences guiding literally thousands of CEOs.
Yo,
Michael freaking Caito.
there he is. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
You
you're
couldn't hear me a second
sideways,
ago.
which is amazing, but
Wait, which way do you want me?
you're literally tilted 90 degrees right now. Can you tilt 90 degrees to your...
You're tilted 90 degrees.
There you go. Before I get into anything, I obviously have to say, Caito, I have known you for, I think it's like 25 years.
25 years.
I am actually really excited you're here. And on top of that, you have such great depth of experiences. So this is a super special episode for me. It's number 30, by the way. I'm Jason Niedle, founder of Tethos. We are a growth agency, and we've been accelerating tech company growth for over 20 years through strategy, branding, lead generation, and conversion. Check out tethos.com/podcast for my new playbook. I'm pretty excited about this. I just got that all written and wrapped up yesterday, compiled from interviews with executives like Michael Caito here. I call him Caito. Is that all right, Mike?
Yes, that's what everybody calls me.
Caito. So go ahead and look it up at tethos.com/podcast. Today, we're going to talk about tech company growth with Caito, CEO of MAP. I don't know how it's been 25 years. When we started out, we were back in EO, back in roughly 2000, 1999, something like that. And he became chapter president of our entrepreneurs organization. I did later also become chapter president. He became global chairman, traveling around the world, leading, I think, what was 10 or 12,000 presidents at the time. There's just a lot of leadership in there. And I imagine that was an unbelievably educational and rewarding experience. And Caito's always been super charismatic and fun. Back in the day, he created Orange County's first food delivery services, restaurants in the run. And now he's the CEO and owner of a management consulting firm that kind of really started it all. MAP Consulting, they were founded 65 years ago. They provide executable management solutions and strategies through their MAP management system, focusing on vital factors.
That's pretty good, by the way. That's a good, I like that. Yes, you need to be working on my business a little bit. Okay, keep going.
I
Sorry.
just mostly read it off your website.
I don't remember seeing that one. That must be a new one. I like that. Okay.
And by the way, to the listeners out there, I have used MAP and it is absolutely brilliant. The vital factors are brilliant. As I was reading up on this, I'm like, damn, I need to do more of this again because it is really a smart way to do things. And they implement through their team of consultants and digital products for entrepreneurs. So welcome, Caito.
Hey, great to be here. It's so funny because, like as we were like getting warmed up and reacquainted, we talked about this thing about peerness and how, you are who you hang out with. And we met 25 years ago and we were both small entrepreneurs trying to figure out what the hell are we doing. And like when you start a company, any kind of company, like you can't really like you run out of neighbors to talk to about stuff.
Yeah.
And some of your old friends don't have that crazy gene that you have, which is I have to open a business. So you get around people like ourselves in EO, the Entrepreneurs Organization, and all of a sudden we flourish in so many ways. So it's pretty cool.
I've thought about this aspect of peerness for a long time. And I'm like, why did I resonate? Like in EO, I made a lot of friends. And I was like, why am I making friends with, just because they own a business doesn't mean I should like this person. And I realized all entrepreneurs are overly optimistic to some degree. Like we all believe the stupid idea that we have is going to be a great idea and it's going to work. We're willing to put in the effort and make it work. So we believe in ourselves in a certain degree, right? We have a certain amount of expertise in at least some field, and we're willing to learn and grow or we wouldn't be there. And so I think this idea of all those key factors together makes it really easy to just relate to people. Like we jump on the phone after years and it's like, dude, I love you. I miss you. This is great.
I think that's it. That's what the core was, because it's so hard to find people that think like that. But you said something really important. Like when we leaned into EO. And so I don't mean to keep bringing up EO but there's a lot of peer groups, but we leaned in because we wanted to learn, we wanted to grow. And that meant that when we got in there, not only did we want to do that, others wanted to do that, and we wanted to help each other. And before you knew it, it started to transcend business. And we started to have this trust and respect. We had this instant intimacy, or I call it intimacy, which is instant intimacy. And because you have that and the trust goes up, you can start talking about other things that you normally would not talk about with other people. And so, and this isn't just exclusive to EO, there's other peer groups that you can do that in. And so, but it was the single greatest decision, of course, I'm not going to get into family and the wife and stuff, but the single greatest decision I ever made for my life was joining EO.
I'd have to say so too. And I can even say that my wife was a cause of that, because one of the things that I did was a really amazing seminar program. It changed my life. It made me open to someone who was cooler than I am, like she is. So I absolutely wouldn't have met my wife even without that decision. So it was really critical in my life.
Bro, I remember that. I remember when you met her. I do, and I know that you went through that program. Yep, and totally.
I know. I was like bringing another date to every EO because it was like a good way to bring my dates to something
And you
cool.
are.
And then one day I met her and it was like done.
Well, she's pretty freaking awesome. So of course. So I do remember that. Wow, how funny. Yeah, so that's that backstory. And I think as you for your listeners, if you're an entrepreneur or you're growing a SaaS company, whatever kind of business, I think there's a lot of peerness. It's not just getting around people that are in your space. That's definitely very good to do. I did that in the food delivery space. You're doing it right now, but it's also getting around people that aren't in your space
Mm,
because it can get very myopic when you're just in your little world. But what changed for us is like we were in that world of talking to all the people in our industry, and that for sure helped us make massive strides in our business. So, the lesson there is lean into your industry associations because we would have never grown the business to where we grew it without the help of people out there that we were affiliated with, the Neds, the Peters, the Andys, the Perrys, people all over the country that taught us. Like they were a little older than us, and they taught us, boys, you need to make money, and they taught us a lot about how to make money. And then we ended up scaling the business and selling it. So you lean in there. The other group to lean into is the peers that are just, in the whatever peer group you want to be in, but separate from your industry.
Before I forget, you have a quick tip, a golden nugget?
So I'm going to give you something that we're using in our business, which is dramatically changing the way we do lead generation. We're using an AI tool called Clay, which we use for data enrichment, and it's replaced ZoomInfo and Apollo and those kind of businesses. I can't speak super intelligently to it, but I will tell you this: if you look at your funnel and you go from some people will have a lead gen team that's dealing with building the list and scouring it, and then handing it off to the BDR team. They're setting appointments for your account execs or whatever it is. What we have found is that we've eliminated the need for the lead gen team
Mm,
because the data enrichment features of AI and how we built it has been spectacular. And I'll give you one. We use Clay for all of it. I'll give you one example that we've used. We have a huge database, 65-year-old company. Well, when you go into our database and you go 20, 30 years back, you can imagine the amount of people that we've trained that have gone to new companies. Well, how are we going to figure that out, right? Because it's not like we were getting their LinkedIn profile and staying in touch with them 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So using Clay and some cool data enrichment tools, we were able to now go into our database, pull out data sets, and then Clay goes against LinkedIn and some other tools that are out there, databases, and it's able to spit back to us clients that have left their current jobs and where they're working now and their new titles, which allows our BDRs can call on them, market them, set appointments, and see if we can convert some business. So that's the one tip tool we've been
is
using.
amazing. That's a great tip.
It's a great tip. Yeah. Andrew, who works for us that we hired and recruited for years, he came in and immediately started implementing that. And then once he puts it in place, he finds overseas people to help manage it.
Awesome. Tell our listeners about MAP.
Yeah. So listen, can I start with a backstory?
Yeah. Stories are great.
The backstory is, we in college started a business called Restaurants on the Run, which was the business when we met 25 years ago. And we were 5 years into it at that point. And so we were delivering food from restaurants to homes and businesses. Think DoorDash. Okay. But think DoorDash before there was the internet, before there was mobile phones. So we were literally answering phones using two-way radios and all this stuff. And over time, we had adapted to mobile tech. We adapted to the internet. We had a really good tech stack. And so eventually we were able to buy companies and aggregate them into our business from different parts of the country. But about 6 or 7 years into the business, we had a small investor slash advisor. Without getting too deep into the story, he would ask me questions on a regular basis, and I just really didn't have good answers. I was one of those overly enthusiastic and optimistic entrepreneurs. And for those of you listening, whatever kind of industry you're in, you know what I'm talking about. It's like when we got a business and we see everything through a rose tint, and we may understand our client, we may understand our people, but we may not exactly understand how to scale. And so I was at this critical point where I was maybe a good entrepreneur and I had two business partners, but I wasn't really building a business that you could scale. And he looked at me one day and he literally said to me, he goes, Michael, if this was a publicly traded company, we would fire your ass as the CEO. And so I had to take like a big step back and, take some time to reflect on how that made me feel. And yeah, I was disappointed. I was hurt, but I was frustrated. But more than anything, Jason, I was just fired the F up to go to figure it out. And in my mind, I wanted to make this transition from being an entrepreneur to being an entrepreneurial CEO.
Mm,
Shameless plug, just started a podcast called The Entrepreneurial CEO. We as entrepreneurs can put companies on our back, but eventually we get to the point where we're like, okay, entrepreneurs create, CEOs scale. How am I going to bridge that gap? Because I can create, but I'm not good at scaling. And so I went to my forum, my EO forum, told them the story. Some of the boys, which you know, were like, they didn't have answers for me. But one of them, this guy, Chris Deering, who's a CPA, after the meeting, he had this guy from MAP call me. And, I'll never forget this guy, Ed Stein, Philadelphia Eagles fan. And he goes, I talked to Chris. It sounds like you got some issues. I go, yeah, yeah, we do. I do. Yes. Yeah, it's all me. I have some issues for sure. So he goes, we have this workshop we do, which we still do right now. So I went to this 2.5 day workshop in Newport. And it was like, it was, this workshop was a deep dive on me, 360 from peers and employees. But I really figured out like how I ticked, why I was good at certain things, why I was bad at certain things. But more importantly, I got this like toolkit of how to run a business. And there's 6 things managers have to get right in business, which I can talk about later if you like. And after I went to the workshop, I was like, this is what I need. This is the discipline of execution. Because MAP not only trained me and then eventually trained my managers, but they helped us put in this execution system, a management system. Like you said, you're going to build a strategy with a company. Well, if the company doesn't have a system to execute, they're not going to get it done. And it's like in marketing has systems, sales has systems, but a lot of times companies don't have a management system. And that's what we put in, which was bottom line goal setting up and down the organization. So we did that. And I brought a coach in to help make that happen because I wasn't capable of doing it all myself. And anyways, long story short, we did that. And for 15 years, we grew the business, bought companies, and we ended up selling it to Grubhub 10 years ago. But 2 years after that, as I was searching for what's next for me, which a lot of your listeners eventually will get to if they're not already, what's the next phase? What am I doing next? I realized that it was more about meaning than money, and that I wanted to connect my purpose, which is all about impact around in the entrepreneur world. Like I'm all about how do we help entrepreneurs grow businesses? Because when entrepreneurs grow businesses, they hire employees and they raise the standard of living in the community. So we can change the world through entrepreneurship. That's my passion. And so MAP seemed like the perfect fit. So we put a deal together and we bought MAP so that we can help more companies do what MAP did for us.
That's amazing. I love the arc as you found it on your own and then ended up taking it over.
It's not easy. Listen, it's a new business. We all know that past successes don't necessarily translate. There's certain things you can do, but every business is different. Every culture is different. And you really got to settle in. And in the first 5 years, 6 years, I was really a part-time CEO. And when you're a part-time CEO, you're going to get part-time results. So I've transitioned to way more involved and full-time than I was for the first 5 or 6 years. Got a new executive team. They like to hold me accountable and push back. And we spend most of our time really on strategy. Like we know how to execute. Now it's more about the choices you need to make in strategy, like you do with your clients.
So we just took a quick break to fix a couple technical issues. And right before the break, you were talking about 2 things that kind of piqued my interest. One, I want to know about the 6 qualities that you were talking about. Um, and then the other thing I keep thinking about is like you're CEO of CEOs. What does that mean to you? What's at the heart of your role? How you've seen all these other CEOs, and then your job is to help them be better CEOs. What's at the heart of your role?
The company has a bank of people that work with CEOs. I work with some myself. Then I also work with our CEO coaches. So I mean, at the heart of what we do, what I do is there's probably 3 pieces to it. Number one, how do we get the organization focused? Which a lot of that is strategy, but also a lot of that is measuring the right things. Okay. The second thing is once we kind of get focused, how do we get the organization aligned up and down? And once again, that's making hard choices, communicating that to the organization, and then make sure that we're measuring the right things, as I said the first time, up and down the organization. So this way, everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows their job, but they also know how what they're doing impacts the vision and the strategy of the business. 3, put accountability in place. Because what good is trying to get your organization going in the right direction if nobody's being held accountable to getting the job done? So those are kind of the 3 things that we, at a very high level, try to accomplish with our companies that we work with and any CEOs that I work with.
I love that. And what are you doing for your own learning? Like you're in this seat at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. You have your own coach. Like who?
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of, quite honestly, like right now, I don't have my coach. My coach was, the best coach you could have that worked at MAP, and now he's kind of an employee. So he does some coaching to me, adjacent coaching, but it's nothing as formal as it needs to be. So it's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately about who's the next coach that I can have. I mean, I interact with a lot of my peers and so on and so forth, but you can learn from your peers, but you also have to have that next level where you're talking to somebody that can help make sure you're being held accountable.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm kind of torn. Part of me wants to talk about the meta learnings, the learnings of what you've learned seeing all these CEOs. And then part of me wants to get down to like the nitty gritty, like what's Cato doing to grow Cato's business? But maybe
Yeah.
let's start broadly. Like what are
Yeah.
what are common traits in CEOs that are growing companies? that are
Well,
doing well?
it's funny you should say that. A lot of them are, there's a lot of traits we could attributes of great leaders. But the one lately that I've been observing a lot is I think some of the great CEOs, they figured out this balance between being really involved in their business and inspecting what they expect. So they know the numbers, they're in there looking, they're digging, but they're not micromanaging. So they're empowering their people, but they know enough to have the conversations that need to be had. I said earlier, you can't be a part-time CEO because you're going to get part-time CEO results. I learned the hard way for that because I bought this business and I was like, hey, this is great and it's cash flow. And I thought I was in the business. Like I'm like learning it, knowing it, communicating every single day, but wasn't really doing all the things that needed to be doing. So, the best CEOs that I find are they're full-time CEOs. They understand they have to they know that they have to be in the weeds to some extent, but they need to empower their people, delegate properly, and not think that because they're the CEO and they built a good team that they can just go off and gallivant and do whatever they want to do. The time that they're not in the business should be spent in the ecosystem of the industry, understanding the players, whether they're people you compete with, people you don't compete with, people you can learn from, whether it's private equity, venture capital, whatever your strategic exit might be, talking with customers. All of those things play into what the CEO is supposed to do because the best CEOs have like their eyes can go in two different directions. One is looking at the current state of affairs for the business. And that might be 70% of what they do. But the rest of the time is spent looking forward, thinking, what's next? How do I see around corners? Who are the people that can help get us to where we want to get to? So it's a combination of both of those in my mind that make that's one of the attributes, the one I've learned the most from lately by watching CEOs of companies that I've worked with and say, holy shit, you're crushing it. And there's one thing you're doing that I'm not doing, putting real solid time into the business and understanding it, but not sacrificing your health and your family and your children.
Yeah. If we flip that question on its head, what common mistakes do you see over and over again in leadership and company leadership?
I mean, first of all, you can micromanage, you can not focus on hiring the right people. You can, not focus on continuous learning because as companies start to grow, your people need a different kind of leader because
Hmm.
now you're not employing kids anymore. You're potentially employing families. So it's a different, you have to, it's never making that transition or putting the system in place to really be a CEO, or to have process in
Mm.
place that allow you to be the entrepreneur, but have the systems in place to support it. So, I mean, that's a big one. There's a
So
lot of
not having
mistakes.
the system in place.
There's a lot of mistakes that we make as leaders. I mean, um, we could go on, but that's the big one that I see the most. And again, for entrepreneurs, what comes with putting the discipline in place in your business are attributes that help grow a company. So you stop chasing shiny objects. You focus on, we're going to get these people. Are we onboarding them the right way? Okay. Do we have a system to retain our best people? Okay. Are we organized in a way that allows us to execute against what we want to do? Do we have a plan? Do we measure the right things in the business? How often do we check up on the performance of individuals, teams, and companies? Those are all byproducts of a disciplined CEO or a disciplined entrepreneur trying to be a disciplined CEO. Those are the things that help take it to the next level, but never losing sight of the grind. And I know people are going to be like, well, you can have it all. No, you got to fucking grind a little bit if you're trying to build a company that you can sell. Okay. It's just no way around it. You got to be in it. And it's really hard your second time around. Okay. And that's where I've struggled, but now I'm back in it and I'm going to continue to get a little more grindy and gritty, but you got to do it. And I know people are going to listen to this and say like, well, you got to have work-life balance. Bullshit. You got to have integration of your life. You got to make sure that you're focused on yourself, that you're healthy, happy, fulfilled, emotional, you're strong, you're in the gym every day, you got habits, because if you do that, then you can make sure that your family is great because you got to be a great husband or wife. You got to be or spouse, you've got to be a great dad. Okay. And if you're doing those things right, if you're strong physically, mentally, emotionally, you're getting the help you need, you're focused on your family. Now the business becomes that much easier because we've all seen the entrepreneurs, Jason, that they go to work and they're not taking care of themselves and they have a fucking heart attack, excuse my language, or they're
Yeah.
getting a divorce and they're totally distracted. You cannot be your optimal self as a CEO unless you've got your family in check and your personal life in check. If you
Hmm.
can't do that, you're only going to be operating at 60%. So, anyways, I don't know if you asked for that, but I had to say it because we all do it.
I like it. It's interesting. I had one guest who said, I don't want to be like my dad. He worked too much. I never saw him. I work 18 hours a day right now. And I was like, wait, let's talk
That's not
about
what I
that,
mean
right?
by grind.
Seven days a week, you know? And I'm like, there's a little disconnect between the desire and the action right now.
Because Jason, there's tools now that we can, like, if you're a CEO and you don't have a virtual assistant, or you're not using tools that are out there to make it so that you can have family dinner with your kids, you can coach the games. I mean, I know you can't do it all as if you're not working, but you can lean in enough if you're leveraging and delegating. The problem with a lot of these entrepreneurs that are working 70 hours a week is they've got the big red S on their shirt, Superman. They think they can do everything better than somebody else. That's what I meant the difference was. That's the difference between micromanaging and empowering. If you remove the S and you empower and train your people and delegate properly, okay, that's how you can have the life that you really want to build as an entrepreneur.
But that takes a system you talked about, right? They have to get organized with the strategy and measure the right things. They have to get everyone in alignment, and then they have to hold those people to accountability, not right, ultimately themselves to the accountability, but pushing that downstream so that they know the things are getting done.
Jay, totally. I could walk you through the 6 things. I'm not going to go deep, but if you want, I can walk you through the 6 things every company or every manager needs to get right.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll go high level, and I'm going to approach it from a CEO's perspective because this is the book I'm writing. So this is good practice for me. But there's 6 things: leadership, communication, staffing or people, planning, organizing, and controls. I'll walk them through slowly. Leadership. We as a CEO, our job is to paint that envision future. We've got to have a vision for the organization. That's why people follow us. Okay. So there's a couple things that I talk about as it relates to leadership. You got to have your vision, and you've got to get rid of this S on your chest, because that's a really big part of leadership. Leadership is understanding where we're going and understand that I have to take a different role in running this company than what I might have done for the first year. The second thing a great CEO has to do is we have to be able to communicate that vision. We've got to be able to put the brand story together that you're excellent at, and be able to communicate that not only to our employees and not only to our clients, but the other constituents that are out there: supply chains, future customers, future investors, future acquirers, the media, whatever it is. We've got to have that story buttoned up, because when you go to market and you at some point say, we want to sell the business, you don't want to be starting from scratch. So you got to be able to, you got to understand leadership. The third one's easy. We all know it. We got to get the right people in place. And it starts with the executive team. It's our job to make sure we get the right people and not only get them, onboard them, and freaking retain them, train and retain. Okay. So now you've got a vision. You're able to communicate that vision because that will help you attract people. So now you got your team. Now this team needs to build a plan. And I think of a plan in 2 parts. The first step is your strategy. Who are you in the marketplace? And there's certain choices you need to make. And the second part is, what's your actual operational plan that you have on a year-to-year basis? So that's planning, and you got to lead that. The fifth piece is, how are you structured internally? How are you organized to achieve the goals that you set in your plan? Okay, what's onshore, what's offshore, what's in-house, what's out-house, what's your structure look like, where are you located? All of those decisions need to be made. Does everybody have a clear job description? Does everybody know exactly what they're being measured on? Because remember, A players want to win. So they want to know how they cross the finish line. So what are the 2 to 3 things? If you built an org chart, could you put 2 to 3 vital factors in each box so that everybody knew how they won? And the last piece is performance management, which is, how often are you reviewing your plan to see if you're on track? How often are your people setting goals? In our company, at MAP, all of our employees set goals every single month, and they're tied to what I just said, what they're measured for, what their job is. So it's easy. It's like, if you're listening to this and you want I'll give you this nugget at the end, but because there's an easy way to do this, but just to recap it, do we have the vision? Are we talking about, are we recruiting the right people? Are we putting the right strategy in place? Are we structured the right way to execute our goals? And are we measuring the performance of our people and of our company on a regular monthly basis? Those are the 6 things that you got to get right in a business at a high level. I'm sure people can poke holes in that. And then I would push back and say, well, that hole you just poked fits over here. That one fits over here. I'm just giving you a broad-based framework.
I love that. And by the way, I might have designed hundreds, if not thousands of books. So if you want some help when it comes time to your book, then let's talk. So talk about your company. Like, often the cobbler's kid has no shoes. I am a marketing company, and I didn't really start marketing until a year ago myself. It was just never a priority. We had enough business coming in, and I never had to do it. How do you get out of all of the telling people how to grow and make yourself grow?
Yeah, well, we just practice what we preach. And I'm not saying when I came in that we were doing that. We did it pretty regularly, or we had a good cadence in place, but the cadence has really expanded. I'll give you the best example. It's like, I have this new executive team. They were all former clients of Map who built companies and exited. And now they're sitting on the executive team with Wendy, who's been there for 30 years. And it's a great team. But teams have to kind of blend together. They have to form what's called form, storm, norm, and perform. And we have to go through that phase. But the other thing I noticed is like the crux of what we do is we put a coach in a business every month. For that one, we call it a Vital Factor team meeting. Once a month, a coach is in a business and they're sitting with the executive team and they're looking at it's like a 3-hour meeting, could be a 4-hour meeting. And it's like, but it's that one time every month that like the executive team is like, we're digging in. Okay. And we're looking at what's working, celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Then what challenges do we have? And then we spend some time problem solving and creating action out of those problems, so that they build momentum. We don't get stuck. We don't have a meeting where it's like, let's talk about a problem for an hour and nothing happens. Then we look at the dashboard or the scorecard for the executive team, those like 15 metrics, we call them vital factors that really matter. And like, how are we doing? Are we on track? What corrective actions do we take? And then we review everybody's goals that they set last month, and everybody sets new goals for the following month. And then we wrap it up with a key takeaway. That happens across, it's happened across thousands of companies on a monthly basis. So that's how we work with clients. Well, guess what? I was
Oh,
having that meeting,
I was going to say, I'm hoping you're doing it yourself.
but there was no coach in the meeting. And I built this executive team and I tried to like run the meeting, and it was, Jason, a total disaster. I can go run it with a company. I just did it this morning. And everybody loves it. We get a call afterwards. And one of the guys like, bro, that was our best meeting ever. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, that's good. Thank you. I'm glad we took away, but we're moving the needle. But I wasn't doing it in the business until literally in the last 4 or 5 months, once the executive team settled in. And now we have a coach working with us every single month. And it's, dramatically changed. I don't know if that's what you were looking for, but I'm just telling you, you're totally right. When I talk about MAP, I say we have to eat our own dog food because I want MAP to be a case study for MAP. I want MAP to be a case study that we can give to our clients and say, this is the process we ran. This is what we did to make choices around how we're going to grow.
I like to look at constraints a lot too. So you have leadership, communication, people, plans, organization, and performance management. Like, where is your constraint to growth? What's holding you back?
Well, before I go there, I think every CEO has to have a little bit of healthy paranoia, which is what's around the corner, what's out there in 2 or 3 years. I was literally just studying a case study on Taylor Swift and how she is the ultimate entrepreneur and how she identified her niche. I mean, the story with her is like she literally was successful. She was a 15-year-old singer. And when she went to the people that were helping her build her career, she said, I want to go after teen girls in the country space. And they're like, there's no market there. And she's like, well, I'm one of those girls. And like, we're listening to a bunch of music that isn't for us. So she went and hit a home run in the niche of country music, then said, you know what? It's time to make an adjustment. And she had an adjacent strategy to start going into pop.
Mm.
But she didn't leave country. She would release her albums in country first and then go to pop. And she evolved into that. Then she got focused on her community. Then she became obsessed with her clients or customers or fans. And so she is if you follow her little roadmap there, it's like, it's a pretty interesting roadmap for a lot of entrepreneurs to learn from. But our biggest constraint, it's a very good question. Everything that I think about from a constraint perspective is distribution. The biggest question I'm trying to answer right now, Jason, is strategy. When you look at strategy, one of the choices you have to make is distribution. How are you getting to your customer? Do you have a sales force? Are you a marketing driven company? Are you a partnership driven company? Are you completely based off referrals? Are you going through distribution? How are you getting to your clients? And it's the biggest constraint I see right now because we're trying to answer that question. We're trying it from a sales perspective, a marketing perspective, a partnership perspective. We don't really do social media yet, except LinkedIn. So the biggest constraint is what's the most efficient way to get to our clients, knowing that we have an industry structure that has some limitations on where you spend your money because you have consultants that make the majority of the money, which leaves you with a smaller pie to work on. So it's like how to best use those funds to scale your business.
Mm-hmm.
So someone might look at me and say, why don't you franchise? Okay, that's an option. I could. Some people might say, why don't you license? That might work. Some people might say, write a book, which is what I'm doing, and see what that can do for lead gen. Some might say, change your model to lead with technology. Some people might say, put all your efforts into partnering with YPO. So the constraint is in my head.
Every one of those would work, right? But how well would they work? How well would they fit within your culture? How do they fit with what you're doing?
I may be wrong here, Jason, but I'm a little impatient. And I don't have 30 years to build this business to make the impact that we want to make. My horizon is much, much shorter. And that doesn't mean we won't do it for 30 years, but I don't have 30 years to figure it out. I don't want to go from where we're at today to 5x and take 30 years. I'd rather do that in, 7 years, but that means integrating everything from who's your customer to what's your value to how are you finding those to what are your capabilities that reinforce everything. How do you make that fit together? So you asked me, what's my biggest constraint? My head is my biggest constraint right now, trying to make the right decision without all the data and push forward and test, fail, test, fail. And
Hmm.
we're doing that. But I think the constraint for the business is perhaps me not taking enough time to think through it. Every CEO, like I described the CEO before that I talked to, every one of those CEOs that I said, they're in the business, there's a little bit of a grind factor. They all schedule think time every
Hmm.
week, and they take the 2 to 3 hours a week and just get above everything. And I've done some of that, but that's my next huge step in addition to who my next coach is to have more think time to help guide the organization.
So one of my guests, Mark Rickmeyer of TXO, he saw an interview with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. And the question was like, show us your calendars. And Bill Gates was super proud. He's like booked wall to wall with meetings. And Warren Buffett holds up his and he's like, you're doing it wrong. And he had like one meeting on his calendar, you know? And then Mark, the guest, said he started something called Walk Shop, which is like a workshop. And he takes a bunch of CEOs and they go out in the woods and there's no rooms. You walk all day. You walk and you talk. And sometimes you're in the group and sometimes you're one to one. And he's like, when you're out and you're moving and you're on your feet and there's no paper and there's no device, things change. And I think both of those things are just ways to get to the point that you said is like, it's so important to find a minute of solitude, a minute to actually like let the waters calm so that I can figure out where did they settle? Where am I? Who am I? And then now I can look ahead and I can see something ahead because haven't been particularly great at that and spend my time flustered and running around and preparing for my next meeting in 9 minutes when I could, be happy talking to you for the next 2 hours. And like that time is so critical.
Well, Jay, that's a great point. Sometimes we hear these things. Like I've heard that. I think I've heard that story before or saw it or something. Maybe I can't remember. But like we have to be ready to hear those things. Like I could hear something today, then hear it in 6 months. And today wouldn't phase me. In 6 months, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm ready for that. So I think you're right. It's making the time. What you just said that I love is that if you combine what I said, which is think time, with what you just said, walk time, you just did a lot of think about how many things because that walk time could not only be think time, could be learning and development time, but you're working on yourself as well, physically and mentally. So you're killing two birds with one stone. And that's what the smart CEOs do. They're going to do that. And so it's like, oh, I didn't get to the gym today, but I had a 60-minute walk and talk. I love that. Yeah, I'm a little more vulnerable. This is probably the most vulnerable I've been on a podcast, but you kind of brought it out of me and you're making me think a lot about what I need to do to be better because we never be satisfied.
By the way, tell the listeners your new podcast name again.
Yeah. So new podcast is The Entrepreneurial CEO. I know it's on LinkedIn right now. That's where we started with it. And we're doing it. We're interviewing a lot of clients and past clients. And I'm really shooting a lot of content that you'll see on LinkedIn. And then the website is mapconsulting.com. And I can be reached at MC as in Michael Cato at mapconsulting.com.
MC@mapconsulting.com. Hey, what are some of the questions that I should be asking that I'm not? I always like to see that, like, where could I ask like a more insightful, deeper, let's fix this kind of a question?
I think your best question today, which I've never been asked, especially on a podcast, was what's the constraint in your business right now? And I would argue that might be the most important question to ask because that's going to drive a lot of dialogue that will bring you back to strategy. And if you can break through the constraint in your business and then potentially break through the constraint in your industry, you've got something special. Yeah, there's a guy named Barrett Ursick, and he talked about this thing called the X Factor, which is 10x your business by breaking through the constraint in your industry. And
Mhm.
so I thought that was the best question. I'm not sure if there's other ones, but I don't care because that was the most important.
I love it. This has been amazing. Look up mapconsulting.com. Michael Cato, his book's coming out. Cato, thank you so much for being on Beyond SaaS. For leaders in mid-stage tech looking to grow, we drop episodes twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can find me, Jason Niedle, at tethos.com. That's TETHOS.com. Where you can also grab that report on hypergrowth because I'm a marketer and I need to give you good lead magnets. Of course, drop any questions or comments for future guests and feedback below. And if you found some value, I really appreciate you sharing that. That helps us a lot. Until next time, this is Beyond SaaS.